Good evening and welcome to this, the first edition of 2021 of the Island Stat Sports Show. I'm your host, Earl Basin, and joining me is none other than Jason Juggling J. Ford. Good evening, sir. Happy New Year to you.
Hey, Happy New Year. Good to see you, Earl Basin.
Well, you know.
Where have you been all year?
Well, been in hiding. A lot happened over the first 6 days. So,
yes,
you know,
today.
This show will be dedicated to talking about the document of sports return to play guidelines for the COVID-19. We know what phase we're in. We're in phase 1 at this time. We're going to go through the phases, try to be very judgmental, and hopefully we were due to be joined by some officials this evening, but due to some behind the scenes stuff, we will be joined hopefully next week, and we can actually dabble in on a lot of these things that have been released in this document that has been put out. The return to sport or sports return play guidelines have been circulated to all the national sports governing bodies, and they will have the opportunities to go through it, try to narrow down what they need to do in their bid to return to sport. And I know the government, who has set up the agency that results in the Department of Youth, Sport, Recreation, National Security, Health Department, and another department, have been working very hard to put this document together. And obviously, now is a chance for us to kind of scrutinize it a little bit, and hopefully things will pop into other people's heads, that not to be that critical, but to be kind of open to suggestions of how things are worded and the interpretation of how this document comes out. On initially looking at it, Jay, give us your sense of what, when you read it, what your immediate thoughts were.
It was a great attempt, and I said a great attempt to put this document together. I knew it's got to be challenging because it's got to be somewhat of a broad guidelines when you're trying to entail all the sports in detail, different ways of training, participating, gathering, which is, you hear a lot in this document, people gathering. So it's hard, whether it's team sports, whether individual sports. You must remember, these are guidelines.
Yes, something to be guided by.
Guided by. Okay, it's not law.
It's not the letter of the Lord, but it's something
the letter of the law.
Guided by. Yes.
And if you look at these guidelines, they're taken from other jurisdictions too, very similar to other jurisdictions. I don't want to say it's a copy and paste, but it's very similar to a lot of other jurisdictions. If you look at some of the guidelines as their return to play, rather be down the islands, or rather just be in the UK, which you see UK now, they resort back to, I believe, phase 1, 2.
Yeah,
for non-elite athletes.
Yeah, not going to phase 0, mate. That's how far.
So obviously, there's something that needed to folks. Obviously, the sport organizations would have had these guidelines presented to them prior to their return to play early part, or I should say
last year, yes.
Last year, mid-season, whatever the case, mid-year. But now to see that a document that's been put together for the public, it gives us a better understanding.
I think one of the things that happened the last time was all the sports had it, and the public was learning about it as they were trying to go to games of sorts. And this time around, we're hoping that people will have the opportunity to hear it, see it, and understand it, and know why certain things happen at the gates of whether it be football, cricket, tennis, whatever sport it is, why things have to be in place and are following the guidelines. So let's actually dabble into the first guideline, and that is first phase, which we're in now, phase 1, non-competitive training or exercise and technical development. Maximum of 10 persons allowed, which includes coach or instructor. No contact during exercise or technical development activities, new groups of 10 persons should arrive at least 30 minutes to allow for cleaning of equipment after existing group has vacated. And then 6 feet between participants should be observed at all times, wearing of mask required except when doing activities. That's what the phase we're in now, Jay, and obviously being able to see that and understand it. Give us your thoughts early in phase one.
Well, phase one, like just looking at those guidelines, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, there's not too many sports that are in season that's going to really affect as far as the social distancing as we've known by now. Obviously, when you're looking at football, there's been a obviously challenge, but you've been to a few training sessions with these guidelines in place. We was with the national, I believe, the girls team not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you can't have your full squad, but you can be creative as far as how you're going to have a training session, and it could be even basically down to strategies and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be physical. That is something.
Yeah.
Now, because you would have to split your team up, and then probably be one team come in at, take for instance, one team come in at 6. You go 45 minutes. 45 minutes, then you got to give a half an hour for the changeover, and have the other team, let's say, start at 7:30 maybe, and go for 45 minutes, and that way you at least get your team in for at least a 45-minute training session. Now, that is something now, realistically, since you don't have a playing date on the weekend, because normally you have 2 training sessions and a playing date on the weekend. Well, actually, you could probably use all 3 of those dates now for training and things of that nature. Looking at other sports, looking at an individual sport that's in season, which would have been probably something like track and field. Obviously, running is not much cleaning you got to do. I've never seen anybody's going to wipe down the track.
It's the distance part.
But, right, exactly. So that'll be something that, obviously they don't want you side by side on the track. So you will have to stagger. A lot of times you probably just stagger runners or whatever the case may be. Or once again, you stagger the times. Tennis, well, obviously you're definitely more than 6 feet apart. Actually, when you play. Now, I think a lot of these guidelines, and I think this is where it doesn't really, especially in this phase, it doesn't really say too much of prior and after. And I say that because that's when I feel that a lot of the congregation action
takes place.
Prior to you, when you get to the field and leaving the field.
Right.
I think we've seen enough guidelines. We were there in the early days when cricket was first giving their guidelines, and we heard players and just right down to wiping the ball and using different balls, and we heard it all. But once again, I think it doesn't speak to prior and after. And I say that at the venue.
Right. Now, just here listening to you, there are ways, I guess, you can get around having a full squad if you have you could have a training squad of a training of 20 people, because if you split the field up in 2 halves, you have 2 coaches down one side that never interact with the other side. That's a creative way of doing things. Now, you can have creative other ways of doing things as well. And if you wanted to have, hypothetically, a sport like karting, okay, so they have some classes that have more than 10, so that's going to be a struggle for them. But the classes that don't have up to 10, you can have time trials.
Okay, so let's play devil's advocate. Let's pick karting apart. Right?
Okay, so if I say you're going to come down and do 5 laps, and we'll record your fastest lap, and that will be a time for the day, right? I can get, if I need 4 officials, right? So that means I can only have six other people at the facility at the same time. Yes. Okay, but now most guys have a mechanic. Okay, so I could have 3 drivers and 3 mechanics at the facility at the same time inside the facility. But the facility is a big facility. Okay, so I mean, you write your guidelines. See, that's where these things come into play. You can write your guidelines to assist in helping you to minimize the maximum or minimize the contact, but have maximum as much people as you can there to facilitate a race, a lap of sorts, right? Okay, so now for the problem comes, now you have for a sport like karting, they can't operate without emergency services. So now they get added to it. Okay,
Marshals.
Oh yeah, marshals and all. But then now, see, you can rewrite it because the marshal on the course is more than 50 feet away from each other because they have only corners. You know what I mean? So in actual fact, it could work if they write it in a way that the people that it go to understand it.
Yeah, see, this is where, like I said, this is where I believe still every sport will need a specified document.
Right. Well, that's
and
the guideline document that we're going over now. Is the one that they then have to break down for their sport and be creative. The same thing can happen in a sport like cycling. Like right now, they're in the mountain bike season, right? So you could literally have a mountain bike time trial. You could have the same way when cycling returned, they were having hill climb time trials, right? So in that regard, you just got to be creative in what you're doing and rewrite that policy to reflect just that.
So it's 2 things with the car. Let me go back to the car. 2 things with the car.
Okay.
I mean, that is one of those sports. It will be low risk in transmission, right? By the obviously by nose and mouth, because obviously most of the time those guys got on a helmet.
Right. Yeah.
Now obviously
when racing, not when
racing.
Yeah.
Obviously it's the time, like once again, before and after. So you're looking at equipment and stuff of that nature, right?
Yes.
The other thing that also comes to mind, and you know, we keep saying the venue or whatever. That was some of the problems I heard and saw a lot when we reopened prior. It's hard to have a broad number across the board based on the venue. Because, like you said, some venues are enormous. And to have the same guidelines as a venue that's a lot smaller,
right?
The athletes just deemed that it was just unfair. So you mentioned karting down at Southside. Okay, yeah, there should be definitely a different protocol when it comes to people down at Southside than the squash club.
Yes, definitely, yes.
You could see 10 people probably being too many, at the brink at the squash club.
Right.
But 10 people up at National Stadium.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you can have groups all over the field, pockets all over the field.
Right. What these guidelines in phase 1 doesn't include, well, there's no activity, but what these guidelines don't specify, what we did actually end up having to specify when we got to phase 4 or phase 3, whichever one returned to sports, was the spectator count. This is only talking about the player account. Because remember, when we returned to cricket, they then had to come back and say, okay, so only 250 people could be at the game. Initially, they said, 250 people total, because remember, it was only 150 spectators with 100 officials, 100 officials players together kind of thing.
And they ended up getting exemption for different fields after that.
Right.
Because of this.
And then we got down to football, where they just had a template for the spectators allowed into the grounds, because they didn't worry about the players that much, or per se. But that those are the things that obviously we have to get into as we get through these phases. But let's take our first commercial break, and when we come back, we'll look at phase
Two.
2.
Yeah.
What's that? Phase 2.
Perrier water has been renowned worldwide for over a century and a half. Collected from a pristine ancient mineral water spring in the south of France, originally bottled in a distinctive green pear-shaped bottle, and distributed in Bermuda by John Barris Unlimited, our foremost beverage distributor, Refreshing Perrier is the champagne of mineral waters. Try Perrier water in bold, natural fruit flavors with no added sugar and 0 calories. This month, we're featuring peach, strawberry, watermelon, orange, pink grapefruit, lime, cucumber, and regular Perrier water in cans. Lindos, why go anyplace else?
Well, let's actually look at that phase 2 when we actually get there. Return to team training will be guided by the health department's assessment on the activity COVID cases in Bermuda and what is deemed the appropriate numbers that can participate. No contact during exercise or technical development activities. 6 feet between participants should be observed at all times, and wearing of masks required except when doing an activity. New groups should arrive at least 30 minutes to allow for cleaning of equipment after existing groups have vacated, and no fans allowed during phase 2. So phase 2, Juggler, is moving, I don't know how many sports, adult sports, you have too many people watching the training sessions. I know at youth sports, you got a lot of parents that show up to watch the training. But you know, when we start talking about no fans to watch the training, because that's what it is. It's training.
It's put in the. It's just put in the legend.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's you mentioned it. Unless it's a family member, maybe to pick them up.
Right.
For the most part.
Yeah.
Or the family members involved in some way.
Right.
As a manager or whatever of the teams or whatever. For the most part, kids or people get dropped off to a training session. And what time we finish? I'll be back.
Right.
That's basically it. But once again, something has to be put down in writing. So I think that's just something that's trying to cover that basis. And once again, I've seen these guidelines be consistent with other guidelines in other jurisdictions.
Right. The one thing that is not posted in either 1 or 2 for the sake of the general public is the requirements that are needed for these organizations to return to training, such as temperature checks for the players as they come into the facilities, such as the sanitizing of the hands and so forth, such as wearing of the face mask until you're ready to start the activity. It's not even listed there.
Hey, to be honest, when I saw the face mask thing, and I don't know if you saw it the other day, but it was the first time I had actually seen it. College basketball, it was a women's and men's team the other night actually played with masks.
Yes. It was a Serie A game on the other night that a player was running down the line with a mask on. And I had to kind of look twice. You know how you got the TV over company, you look up and you say, is that a beard? No, it's a mask. He's running down the line.
I'm not sure the science behind that. It doesn't help, does not. I mean, you know what I'm saying? This is something that, once again, Earl, let's step back and just say, hey, we've never been through this.
Yeah, yeah.
So
everybody's learning.
You gotta try something. It may not work. It may work, but
yeah.
Don't fault them for trying it. So there's something that the other thing. Go back to the first. Read back up the first part of that again.
The first part of phase 2.
Yes.
Return to team training will be guided by health department's assessment on the active COVID cases in Bermuda and what is deemed the appropriate numbers that can participate.
I think that is something that probably needs some more clarification. Especially and how do they come to those conclusions?
Yeah. What is and I agree in a sense. What is the deemed appropriate number that could participate, and what is the assessment number?
Tell me.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Yeah. I mean,
if it's X amount of cases, if it's X amount of hospitalizations, is X amount of imports, it's X amount of local community spread,
transmission. Right.
Give me some more clarification when it comes to that, because you just saying that, I'm always going to be in limbo, and I'm
Right.
always going to be asking questions within ourselves.
Right.
Because as we know, as long as we have our borders open, there are cases coming to our island basically daily.
Right.
Right? Even though our local transmissions are a lot more than our imports now, because obviously it's here and it's got to get around. But there's
Right.
we still have cases coming in here daily, whether they are being on the arrival test, whether it's the 4-day test, or whether throughout the 14-day incubation period. There's still cases and people deem it becoming positive within that incubation period. So in saying that, as an athlete, I'm almost going to be in limbo, or even to say what will happen with our season regardless, because there's something that we definitely can't control. And how do you get that
Can't see
information?
that future, and we can't control it. Right.
That's what becomes frustrating.
The thing is, right, if we have a number of, okay, so the government released their study today, or the results today. They had 650 test results received, 4 were positive.
Mhm.
Okay, so now if tomorrow 4 are positive, and the next day 4 are positive, and then the next day 4 are positive, are we on a trend up? According to the document, you know what I mean?
Right. But see,
Yeah,
that's
according
what
to the document,
we don't know.
where do we stand?
Now, what also happens, and if you kept a check of this, because I think we're listed over probably 130,000 cases that have been tested, right? So, but if you look at it, right now I think we're about 94, 96 active cases. Now, we could be averaging 10 to 15 recoveries a day. Right? So, take for instance, we might have 4 positive, but then we might have 20 recoveries. So, once again, is it based off the active cases that are about?
Yeah.
Even if you say, okay, above 100, below 100.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's something that you can understand, so we can all follow. We can all, okay, you know what? We can go to the government website. It gives us the numbers. Okay, well, guys, we're still going to be here until that number comes to this. That's what I'm saying. Just more clarification. I think that'll probably be needed for that.
And obviously, again, we're talking about a working document. I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of pulling and pushing for wordage, for verbiage, to change and give you proper guidelines on where you need to be, when you need to be, and how you need to be, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people will sit around and wait and wait and wait. And believe it or not, man, you have a lot of people in this island that would just go and watch any sport. And we saw that when cricket returned. You had people that they just wanted to get out of the house, mate.
Yes.
They just wanted to get out of the house. And I remember going to the first game, Wellington Oval, and seeing the cars of people waiting in line in their cars around Slip Road, you know, and some people waited, 2-3 hours, man.
You know, they had 2 games, and then some people, it was too late for the first game.
I remember having that conversation. What happens, because you can't make the spectators leave once you pay to get in. I mean, they were trying to force the players of the first game to leave. Okay, that was to allow the players of the second game to come in, but you still can't have no fans in. They got to hope the fans leave. That was not happening, and then they realized, okay, we're going to have to up the fans at these locations. So you remember St. David's had, what was it, 250? 250. White Hill had 250. Somerset and St. George's had 200, and then it changed again. I'm like, you know, okay, the goalposts move as you get into the structure of the platform in which you put out. This time around, you've already had that run through, so it should have been a little more detailed this time around. You know what I mean?
Some things that we probably don't take into consideration is the bathroom facilities.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. We can have but someone's got to go. They got to do it, right?
Yeah.
You see that on a normal, especially. Okay. Let's look at a football game. What happens at halftime?
Everybody goes to the bar. Everybody goes to the bathroom.
All right. 3 things: bar, food if it's available,
Yeah, yeah,
bathroom break.
yeah, yeah.
Between innings at a cricket game.
Bar bathroom. It's a norm. It's a habit. Yeah.
Because you don't want to miss nothing, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
I mean, obviously, I mean, for all the stakeholders that are involved there, obviously, it's got to be challenging for everybody, especially if they're not. That collaboration between them and that organization or that sporting body has to be well received with information.
Right.
Because obviously, let's take for instance, you at the head of one particular organization, you're gonna want the best not only for your athletes, but also for your fans, because you want to keep your fans when we come out of this.
Right.
You don't want to, you don't want to. People, I ain't coming no more. That
Right.
all sports have been struggling for fans, so that's the last thing. And like you said, people just wanted to come back out and just enjoy company. But then again, I don't think it's gonna be much enjoying company if we're gonna actually stay in your car or have a face shield or stay. It's not the way our culture, or you would say our culture is.
Yeah. We're a community place that loves the community. So very, very touchy-feely, interacting,
and
social people.
And that's why, getting back to your point, that's why it's going to be very important to make sure that some more clarification comes on dealing with fans.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's take our second commercial break, and when we come back, we'll talk phase 3.
This month, we're featuring a range of infant and baby care products from Hello Bello, a company started up by a husband and wife team who were inspired to meet the challenges arising from the often surprising, not to mention messy, experiences that came with the territory known as parenting. The couple behind Hello Bello know that being a parent is uniquely demanding, and their mission is to bring you premium products at gentle prices. Try Hello Bello Apple Blossom Baby Lotion, Lavender Shampoo and Body Wash, Flushable Wipes, Diaper Rash Cream, Lavender Bubble Bath, and more. Lindo's. Why go anyplace else?
Well, we've talked phase 1. We've talked phase 2 of the sports return to play guidelines, the COVID-19 sports return to play guidelines. Let's go to phase 3, Juggler. Competitive training to prepare for competition. Full competitive training will be guided by the health department's assessment on the downward number active COVID cases in Bermuda. Okay?
Yes.
Sporting training activities and persons will be able to participate as normal to prepare for competition. No competitive competition allowed versus other teams, clubs, groups. New groups should arrive at least 30 minutes to allow for cleaning of equipment after existing groups to avoid large gatherings. The maximum numbers allowed at the venue will be guided by the health department's assessment of the existing state of Bermuda as it relates to the spread of COVID-19. Well, I know you want me to reread that first one, and that is full competitive training will be guided by the health department's assessment on the downward number of active COVID-19 cases in Bermuda. And then the last one, the maximum numbers allowed at the venue will be guided by the health department's assessment of the existing state of Bermuda as it relates to the spread of COVID-19. One says active COVID cases, and the other says the existing state. How do you how do you figure that out?
Clarification, please. I just need clarification. Clarification, please. No, I say that because once again, are we talking about actual number? Are we talking about a percentage?
Right.
And
I think the first one talks about an actual, and the last one talks about a percentage, or vice versa. However you want to look at it, it's just, and I think that needs the clarification because one will look at, okay, what is the active numbers going on? The active number, because a lot of times, and you said this earlier, right? A lot of people would honestly believe there are over 500 cases of corona in Bermuda right now. But that's the total number that we've had. We right now have the active cases, which are
94, maybe
94. So, like you said, what is it? As long as we don't go over 100.
Now that's not so. This is part two, but I say clarification. So let's play devil's advocate again. Let's go back 3 weeks, maybe. Beginning of December.
First week of December.
First week of December. There's a few large gatherings, exemption for funerals that deem to be a spreader, super spreader, as you will say. Right? And within the next 2 weeks after that, then you start seeing local transmitted cases, 20 plus cases a day. We actually rose to over 200 odd active cases within that time period, right? So is there going to be a comfort zone where you got to get to a certain number to allow a hit of 20 cases a day? Because realistically, the way it's written, without clarification, you could be training today and not training tomorrow.
Right.
Based on whatever comes out in that the national report daily. If it's at a certain, once again, if it's at a certain number.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Right. So just clarification. I mean, that's
and I must point out again, full competitive training will be guided by the health department's assessment. So in this document, if I had all my players come in for training, I'm going by this document guideline. Nowhere does it say I do temperature check. Nowhere does it say I do tracing. Nowhere does it say I do any of this stuff. If we're going to put in guidelines, we're going to have to make sure that it's specified what you need these people to do, so that when you show up and it's not being done, they say, well, show me on the guideline where I'm supposed to do that.
And I'm glad you said that, because we've been around, and obviously when we go to certain places, obviously we have to sign the log or whatever for contact tracing and all these things. It should be in the document.
Right.
Should be in the document. For contact tracing.
If you spell it out in the document, they can have no excuses and no arguments once you show up to do a spot check.
Or even and something else that I looked at also comes to mind. I'm just thinking that was put in some of the other protocols prior to the document. Wearing masks to the actual training session. Actual training session. We know when we had to go certain places, we had to wear a mask to that.
Yeah.
Now we're allowed to take off the mask once we're inside. But once again, should we assume that's what it is? Based off the national protocols for when we go to places?
Right.
Or should we specify even with this document?
Right. The other thing is, in this document, in phase 2 and in phase 3, okay, so in 3, full competitive training. In phase 2, return to team training will be guided, right? When was the last time you was in a changing room, mate? Changing rooms are smaller than a bar. So you have no restrictions on how many people could actually be in this changing room.
So you just said it. So what do we do prior and after? Because that's where we congregate.
Right.
No.
No.
Anybody out on the playing field or the playing surface or this is what that speaks to. It feels to me this document speaks to more of the actual playing, the actual
Returning to play. That's what it
Yes.
says. Returning to play guidelines.
but it doesn't lead up what it doesn't say much from when you get to the venue
Right.
and then when you leave the venue.
Right. Now I know that clubs are required to do temperature checks of both players and spectators, and they're required to do all this other stuff. But here lies this problem. If this document is for return to play and it's also public, if I get to a game and they say, well, in order to come in here, you have to have your temperature check, I pull out this document and I say to them, show me where it says that.
Yeah, it should be consistency.
Right. Whatever it takes for the players to get in, that should be written. Whatever it takes for the spectators to get in, that should be written. And then there's no more arguing. There's no more. Once you say the only way in is this,
And
then that's the only way in.
And I know well, Horace Nephew just going to argue and disagree.
Oh, sure,
It's
sure.
coming in a gate, whether it's wearing a mask, whether it's staying 6 feet. Okay, well, you're 5.5. Why you're not? I mean, you
Right,
have people
right.
who argue if the sky is blue. I mean, that's going to happen. But if it's a consistent message that's being put out by our national security, put out by our Ministry of Health and our Ministry of Sport, I think it should be consistent messaging through all of those stakeholders.
Right. And that's where I think the stakeholders should be part of this talk. To go over this document.
Mhm.
And I'm not just talking about because they do have, I believe they have a national sports organization where all the sports come under one umbrella kind of thing. But if this document is coming out and all the sports should be kind of in on voicing their concerns, voicing their opinions, voicing what has already transpired at their grounds or at their games or whatever, then I think that's the conversation that should be here. No one or two people should be speaking on behalf of a sport that they have no clue about, kind of thing, you know?
I could be ignorant because I haven't done much of this sport in 30 years.
Mm.
You just think about the sport, sailing.
Mm.
Okay, so I guess there's going to be one person be able to in the boat.
Well, that'll be phase. Sailing won't be allowed to return until phase 3.
Because of, but still, no, it's still, and even if
Oh no, sailing won't be allowed until phase 4.
4, yeah.
Because in phase 3, no competitive competitions allowed versus other teams. Now, funny enough,
I'm not talking about competition.
is no.
I'm not talking about competition. I'm talking about getting to train. Yeah, don't you train in sailing?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
I'm not talking about a race. I'm talking about training.
But let's put it like this.
Okay, your favorite coming race, coming.
Yeah. That's closer than 6 feet. That's centimeters. At some point in time, the skipper's laying over the crew. That's on a high coat. So, now, interesting you bring up the sport of sailing, because we know that an announcement has been made that the Sail GP will take place in Bermuda in April. The BTA announced that some of the sailors and their families will be here, or I'm not sure families, but some of the sailors will be here a month before. So
they're going to need to train.
Are we going to, if our numbers remain the same because we can't get to phase 4 fast enough, do we say to these people, no, first of all, you can't come.
You're going to have to. That's the front. That's the frustrating part about all that, because you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth when it comes to health and safety.
Yep.
You can't.
Yeah. Well.
If we're preaching health and safety is paramount to not just the athletes but also the citizens of this and residents of this island, then it has to be, because you do feel sorry for it when if you do hear cases of athletes, but then it can be local transmission throughout the community. It has nothing to do with sports.
Right.
So you have people who's contacted a virus who had nothing to do with sports and was based off contact tracing from a person that played a sport. Whether you like it or not, that's the reality. We're seeing that across the board in the world.
I agree. Well, the Bermuda Tourism Authority are having a webinar on Friday and encouraging people, entrepreneurs who could possibly make money on this 2-day event in April, which is the CLGP. But you're right. What happens? How many people will be allowed? First of all, we're going to get across the sailors getting here, the quarantine part. Are we going to, I can't even turn my head, turn the blind eye to that? Because in reality, we've done it for golf. We've done it for sailing, and we've done it for the rugby. So the precedence has been set under different circumstances, but we were told, follow these guidelines, follow these rules, follow these regulations. Okay, but we did have people mingling with the golfers, with the caddies, although they dressed it up where it was 6 feet away while they were playing, but they walked 3 crowds. They interacted with the kids. All those things took place. So hey, it's going to be very interesting.
You also, man, and even though we were talking about the guidelines, but you just mentioned something about the governor as far as trying to entice vendors to that event. How hard is that going to be to the entrepreneur to invest in product?
Yeah, not for the unknown. Will I be in Dockyard or in Hamilton or somewhere, and it's only allowed 50 people to come around?
Give you a prime example, because we see it. We don't see it much here. Only like cup matches. Can't really think of another event we receive, especially in the States. A T-shirt for the event to commemorate the event.
Yeah.
So let's say the CLGP, CLGP 2021 Bermuda T-shirt.
Right.
I get 1,000, 2,000, shipped in, then you call the event.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where
food vendors.
What's the protection for you, the vendor, going in to this event?
Food vendors. Food. It's unless you have a restaurant or something that you can always offload that food to. Right.
But what's funny? Because you still see people riding around, walking around with America's Cup jerseys, tracksuits, rain jackets and all that, or even a T-shirt. But you don't see. How many times you seen a Cup Match shirt?
For that week.
If that at all.
That week.
Yeah.
But that's one other thing. I don't want to get too far off topic, but it reminded me at those 3 events, and we spoke about this a while. So we know there's, I won't say it's a hidden agenda, but we know there's the elephant in the room when it comes to these gatherings. Even not only in sports, but also socially.
Right.
We all hear about, bars, liquor's going to be involved, and then that's going to, for some reason, that's going to encourage people to do this, that, and the other. Well, you mentioned there's 3 events.
Yeah. I'll answer.
Was liquor involved by any way?
major sponsors,
In
not
golf,
just involved, major sponsors and consumed.
in golf, there was not. It was all over the course, wasn't it? Wasn't that a few hills?
Sure.
Huh. So it wasn't just one area where it was.
No, several stations.
Rugby, was it just one bar there at the event?
Two. Yeah, it is what it is.
This one. Whoa, that's that line.
Yeah, it is what it is. We just have to keep our eyes open. Let's take another commercial break, and when we come back, we'll be talking Phase 4, which we know we need to be in tomorrow.
Go Macro started up at the beginning of the millennium in Wisconsin in the U.S. with macrobiotic farming in mind, motivated by the pursuit of health through balanced nutrition. Go Macro is a family-owned company dedicated to living and promoting a natural, whole food-based lifestyle. Like most whole food businesses, Go Macro is also dedicated to bringing you the flavors they love. This month, we're featuring Go Macro Vegan Organic Granola and Coconut, Sunflower Seed Butter and Chocolate, and Coconut Almond Butter Chocolate Chip Macro Bars. Lindos, why go anyplace else?
Well, Jay, the first time we went through this, stop everything, school, sports, everything, we waited patiently to get into Phase 4. So let's look at what Phase 4 entails. As we know, again, it is all sports can compete and participate as deemed normal. Maximum numbers allowed at venues will be guided by the advice of the health department. Any positive test shall result in mandatory testing of all within the team group that are in the same sports bubble and reported to Maceo Dill, the sports development officer. A negative test will be required before any athlete, coach, that has previously tested positive be allowed back into the sports. Teams, sports persons that participate in public sporting events shall, where possible, remain in their sports bubble and refrain from other large public gatherings. Venue management must submit a match day operational plan as to how they will manage the crowd. This plan should include the number security that will be on duty and must be approved ratio based on the size of the crowd that will be permitted to be at the event. Currently, the ratio is 1 security for every 75 persons as per public health guidelines. Okay. Where do you want to start?
All right, so I believe the 1, 2, 3, 4. A negative test will be required before any athlete, coach that's previously tested positive will be allowed back into the sport. Okay. 2 things there. That automatically comes if you test positive.
Mm-hmm.
You have to test out at 14 days.
Right.
Right. So that's a given.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to have that in there, I hate to say I would want all the athletes tested prior.
Well, they did say if somebody tests positive, everybody has to be tested, right?
You can go back and read it. I'm trying to tell you. Right. No, it says if you test positive, you have to test negative to come back.
Right.
So if you're going to, because what?
Right. So everybody, I see what you're saying. So everybody should be tested within that bubble.
If you're trying to create somewhat of, because it mentions that in there, that wording.
Okay. So it does say that. It does say that. Any number 3, it says any positive test shall result in mandatory testing for all within the team group that are in the same sports bubble. So if you test positive, then everybody in the team has to test after that.
I'm not worried. No, like once again, if you test positive, once again, we're not talking about you getting tested.
Yeah, but they're saying that you have to be tested to play.
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say you have to be tested to play.
Well, that's true. It doesn't. It doesn't, because it should say, oh, everyone should be tested. But see, no, they're assuming.
That word again. Woo.
Yeah. But then, okay. So here lies this problem.
Okay.
Okay, so we're in the cold and flu season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a spectator because this is a guideline for, or I'm a player.
Mm-hmm.
So on this particular day, I come in and I have a fever. Right? I'm not allowed to play. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't go get tested because I think I've got the flu.
Mm-hmm.
I come back the next week and I don't have a fever. Am I allowed to play? Because you turned me away only because I had a fever. Nobody at that field doing those tests know whether or not are qualified to say that I have COVID.
And that's we're not even talking you're asymptomatic.
Right.
So I only say that because there is verbiage in there talking about a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you create a bubble?
Well, that's what they're the players. I'm only going to speak from experience of what I've seen when they returned to sports the last time. Mm-hmm. So you can come in a car with 3 other people as a player, and they could be the spectators. But once you get to the field, you have to go to where the players are. So then the players come in through a separate area. They are giving a temperature check and I don't know what else, so hand sanitized and all that. And they've created a bubble for the players.
But here lies the situation when we talk about a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
When you saw the NBA, the NFL, all the major sports, even English. But I even saw it 2 nights ago when England arrived in Sri Lanka. Right? What was done majorly before they got to the so-called bubble?
Yeah,
you all need to get tested.
Yeah, they were tested before they left twice. They tested when they arrived. Did you see them getting sanitized outside?
Everybody has hazmat suits and all that. And I'm not saying once again we're talking about verbiage.
Right.
We're talking about verbiage because if you use this type of verbiage, you're going to look for consistency of other things you're seeing throughout none of the world. Is that the reality here? I don't know. I mean, it's going to cause, obviously, cause comes into all this stuff. But once again, once you start using that verbiage, a bubble, the bubble is supposed to protect you from the outside. That's the whole point of a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to make sure that the bubble is sanitized.
Yeah. Well, that's always going to be
it's not a bubble if it's no guideline, because we still haven't heard too much of the and that's probably with the Ministry of Health when it comes to the venue being sanitized.
Very hard. It's very hard to sanitize a venue in Bermuda with all our salt there and yeah. Other than the equipment you're using, you can wipe that down. But the minute you take it outside.
Now, how often should you wipe it down?
After every use. That's the guideline. Mm-hmm. After you use a piece of equipment.
So once again, when people are not tested coming in, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was one of the things that I had questioned about cricket, because they said one ball is going to be used at one end and the other ball is going to be used at the other. So if I'm burning from one end and then I go field out, when the ball comes to me, I'm not supposed to pick it up because it's not my ball. I don't understand.
Meditate, bring your ball too. Once again, everybody was trying. And once again, like what the pay job is that? Everybody's
Right,
trying to do the best interest of everybody. And I don't want people to take this personal. I mean, obviously, you're gonna get calls on the calls, but you know, but that's why we have these type of shows.
But you have the open discussion, so it's food for thought. And then when it does actually become a legal document of sorts that you're guided by, then at least there's some other input in there. There's some actual reality of, oh, we never thought of that, or we did think of that, and this is why we came to this decision.
I'm talking about the crazy minds of the Island Stat Sports Show, and then you'll figure out something.
Well, let's take our last commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll wrap up the first edition of the Island Stat Sports Show right here. Be right back.
We're spotlighting a food producer whose products are made with real wholesome ingredients, such as the highest grade farm-grown vegetables and certified organic free-range livestock with no artificial ingredients or preservatives, and no compromising on the painstaking quality control. Imagine Foods believe that higher quality ingredients, meeting high standards of purity, yield greater nutritional advantages and a more satisfying flavor. This month, we're featuring Imagine Foods organic roasted turkey, vegetable wild mushroom, and savory beef gravy. Lindo's, why any place else?
And welcome back. We've been through the 4 phases. There is one other thing on the document, procedural guidelines. Further to the phase return to play, guidelines are current and applicable. COVID-19 laws shall apply. So I guess that means whatever laws they're using on the street, outside of sports, they shall apply. I don't know how.
A lawyer will have fun with that.
Yeah.
Too many consistencies.
Yeah. Well,
a lawyer would have fun with that.
Yeah. But it is what it is. And hopefully, again, hopefully next week we'll be joined by officials and we can go over this document and actually have better understanding when we come to the end of next show on these guidelines of how to move forward in returning to sports, because I know there's a lot of people that would love for sports to be back on this weekend. It's not a reality. It's actually not going to happen this weekend, but we all know it will return at some point in time down the road. But how far down the road? Right now, no one knows. All right. Oh, Jay, look.
Well, before we go, Earl, and I just want to thank you for doing the show we've done prior to the show in memory of the late Earl Gabby Hart. I mean, you mentioned how much of a great man he is because giving you your name. Who knows? You share the same last name, but
first name. Yeah.
I mean, first name, but Mr. Hart, you've heard the stories today. I'm pretty sure you've seen many stories on social media. I'll just give you a personal story that I had with Mr. Hart. First things first, his son, Earl Hart Jr., was in my class. But my first introduction to Mr. Hart, I mean, I knew via his son. Mm-hmm. But when I had my accident back in '88, I was getting into my 5th year of high school at the Barclay Institute. And back then, you never really want to stay back.
Right.
That was always, when you graduate, you want to graduate with your class. Now, that wasn't possible for everybody, but that was something that was a norm. Well, I had missed half the year. So I didn't basically return back to school in my 5th year until January. And in the back of my mind, did this make sense? Miss Joan Blaze, which is very close to me, family member, very close to me. She was one of my teachers, but also kept me up to date with my schooling and says, look, you could do this. I'm like, I'm not going to do all this extra studying and bad enough I can't play sports, but studying all that if I can't graduate. So she says, well, not a problem. I'll take care of that. So she sent me to somebody for tutoring, Mr. Hart.
Mm.
And at the time, he was at the Warwick Secondary, so that was another you get up to Warwick Secondary after 3:30 to do some tutoring, and we did some math because at the time I was definitely okay with at that time the BSSCs and the internal, but I was also studying for the SAT.
Mm.
And at that time, I'm right-handed. At the time, I directed tests left-handed,
Mm.
so was trying to be even better than the average person because of you. I
Right.
mean, for a person you write right-handed. Try writing left tomorrow and see how much.
I didn't do it for 2 years, mate. Don't worry.
but you see, but so you know the problems that so. But in saying that, I never forgot what he done for us because of the encouragement.
Mm.
And he always had that positive outlook on regardless. I mean, you always have a coach. He reminded me then of a coach. Now, I didn't know about his sports, when he played for Social Club at that time and all that. I used to see him, I used to see him around games, but I never knew. And one thing, like everybody said, like you knew the voice.
Yeah.
You knew the Hortons voices.
Yes.
You know, you heard certain voices. Okay, all right, Mr. Hart, cool.
Mm.
So, but in saying that, the encouragement that he gave me and just students at the time to just know that you got it in, you have it in you. Even if you can't see it, he was always able to convince you that you can do it. And I remember when once I graduated, because he was there once again. He was at the graduation,
Mm.
and I almost cried on his shoulders because he saw something once again I didn't think I was able to do within in a short amount of time, especially my 5th year, missing half my 5th year. After that, working as obviously in the field, the music field, the DJ field, me doing stuff around a social club, always have talks around him, and I'll see him at around social club. Him being a part of the teachers union, me doing a lot of work for the teachers union over the years, and especially the teachers parties, as you know.
Mm.
I will see him early. He'll come get his plate of food, and we have a little chat because that's and one thing was it was never some people you're always going to talk about a certain subject.
Right.
Mr. Hart, it could be anything under the sun.
Open book. Open book.
Open book, and that is something that I'll always cherish. What he's able to tell me at the time, and always make me believe. Well, get me to believe something I never thought would ever happen. So, to his family, I just want to say thank you for sharing him with us. To my mate Earl Jr., condolences on behalf of the Island Stats Sports Show, and to the family and friends. We're gonna miss him.
Yeah, definitely. And again, may Earl Gebby Hart rest in peace. Good night.